If you ever get caught in a blizzard and see footprints in the snow that match your own stride perfectly, pay attention to which direction they're heading, because they might be leading you somewhere you were never meant to go. I wish someone had told me that before February 9th, 2024, when I got stranded during the worst blizzard to hit Interstate 90 in South Dakota in 40 years. I'm a long-haul trucker, been driving for 16 years. I know weather, I know roads, I know when to pull over and wait it out. What I'm about to tell you shouldn't be possible, but I have the dashcam footage to prove something happened out there, and I have the scars on my hands from trying to claw my way out. The weather report that morning called for light snow, maybe 3 inches, nothing a trucker from Minnesota can't handle. By noon, the forecast had changed, 6 to 8 inches, still manageable. By 2 p.m., they were calling it a blizzard, 12 to 18 inches with wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour. I should have pulled over right then, found a truck stop, waited it out like any sensible driver would, but I had a deadline. A delivery in Rapid City that absolutely had to arrive by 6 p.m. Medical supplies for a hospital, time-sensitive stuff, the kind of cargo that makes you push harder than you should. So I kept driving. The snow started around 2:30 p.m., light at first, just flurries dancing across the highway. Within 20 minutes, it was a wall. Visibility dropped to maybe 30 feet. The road disappeared beneath a blanket of white. My wipers could barely keep up with the accumulation on the windshield. The smart move would have been to pull over, but I was only 40 miles from Rapid City. 40 miles. I could make it. I slowed to 35 miles per hour, turned on my hazards, gripped the wheel with both hands. The highway was empty. Everyone else had had the sense to get off the road. Just me and the storm. At 3:15 p.m., my CB radio crackled to life. Anyone out there? Interstate 90 eastbound, mile marker 212. Static drowned out the rest. I grabbed the handset. This is northbound rig at mile marker 220. You need assistance? More static. Then, stuck? Can't see? Please? The voice was male. Young. Scared. I'm about 8 miles west of your position, I said. Can you give me more details? What's your situation? Whiteout, completely blind, been here an hour, phone's dead. Please help. I checked my mirrors, nothing but swirling white behind me, nothing ahead. Hold tight, I said. I'm coming to you. I shouldn't have. Every instinct I had said turn around, get to safety, let highway patrol handle it. But that voice, that fear, I'd been stuck before. I knew how it felt. So I kept driving east, counting down the mile markers. 219, 218, 217. The wind was picking up. My truck swayed with each gust. Snow had drifted across the highway in places, forcing me to slow even more. 216, 215, 214. The CB crackled again. Thank God. I can see your lights. Keep coming. But I couldn't see anything. Just white. Endless white. Flash your hazards, I said. Help me locate you. Silence. 213, mile marker 212 came up on my right. I slowed to a crawl, looking for the stranded vehicle. Nothing. I'm at 212, I said into the CB. Where are you? No response. I pulled over as far as I safely could. Put the truck in park, grabbed my flashlight and winter gear. The cold hit me like a physical force when I opened the door. Wind screaming. Snow so thick I could barely see my own hood ornament. I clicked on the flashlight. The beam barely penetrated 10 feet. Hello? I shouted. Anyone out here? The wind ate my words. I walked along the shoulder, sweeping the flashlight back and forth, looking for tire tracks, for a vehicle, for anything. That's when I saw them. Footprints in the snow, fresh ones, leading away from the highway into the prairie beyond. I need you to understand something before I continue. I'm not an impulsive person. I don't take unnecessary risks. 16 years of driving has taught me caution, but those footprints, they were stumbling, erratic, like someone disoriented, hypothermic. If someone had left their vehicle and wandered into the storm, they'd be dead within an hour. I followed the prints. They led about 50 yards from the highway. My truck's lights were already barely visible behind me, just a faint orange glow in the white chaos. The footprints continued, deeper into the nothing. "Hello?" I called again. "I'm here to help!" Ahead of me, a shadow moved, a figure, human-shaped, standing in the storm. I ran toward it, flashlight beam bouncing. As I got closer, I realized something was wrong. The figure wasn't moving, wasn't reacting to my shouts or my light. It was just standing there, facing away from me. I reached out, touched its shoulder. It was a sign, a road sign, highway marker. The wind had torn it partially free from its post, and in the storm it had looked human. I laughed, nervous relief. Then I looked down. The footprints continued past the sign, leading even deeper into the prairie. But that made no sense. I'd followed them here. They'd led me to the sign. Unless they weren't leading me to someone. They were leading me away. I turned around fast, aimed my flashlight back toward the highway. The orange glow of my truck was gone, just white, endless white in every direction. I'd walked 50 yards, maybe 60, in a straight line. I should have been able to see my truck. "Okay," I said aloud. "Don't panic. Retrace your steps." I looked down at my own footprints. They led back the way I'd come, but they were already filling in, the wind and snow erasing them even as I watched. I followed them anyway. Walking carefully, counting my steps. 50 steps, nothing. 70 steps, still nothing. 100 steps. The prairie stretched endlessly in all directions. No highway, no truck, no orange glow. I pulled out my phone. No signal. But the GPS should still work for basic location data. The screen showed my position as nothing. No roads nearby. No landmarks. Just a blank spot on the map like I was standing in the middle of an empty field. But that was impossible. I was on Interstate 90, major highway, 4 lanes, thousands of vehicles every day. It had to be a GPS error, the storm interfering with the satellites. I kept walking. The direction I thought was west, back toward where my truck should be. 10 minutes passed, 20. My feet were going numb despite my boots. My face burned from the cold and wind, and I still couldn't find the highway. I should have covered 200 yards by now, should have reached the road, should have seen lights or heard traffic or found something. But there was nothing, just snow, just wind, just the endless white that surrounded me on all sides. I stopped walking, tried to think. Whiteout conditions can be disorienting, I knew that. Easy to lose direction, to walk in circles without realizing it. But I'd been careful. I'd been watching my compass bearing. I'd been counting steps, unless the compass was wrong. I pulled it out. The needle spun lazily. No fixed direction, just rotating slowly like it couldn't find north. Magnetic interference, had to be. Maybe from the storm, maybe from something in the ground. I put the compass away, pulled out my phone again. That's when I noticed something. The time, 3:47 p.m. But I'd left my truck at 3:20. I'd walked for maybe 5 minutes before finding the sign, turned back immediately. I'd been out here for 27 minutes. It felt like 10. The CB radio on my belt crackled. "Found the highway yet?" I grabbed it. "Who is this? Where are you?" 212. "Where you left me. Still waiting." "I'm trying to get back. I'm lost. Can you see my flashlight? Can you follow it to me?" Laughter. Cold. Wrong. "You're not lost. You're exactly where you're supposed to be." "What does that mean? Who are you?" "The same person you came to help. The same person who needed rescue, except static. Except I was never on the highway. I was never in a vehicle. I've been out here a very long time, and I get so lonely when the blizzards come." I dropped the radio, turned in a slow circle, flashlight sweeping the storm. Nothing. No one. Just white. "You followed the footprints, just like the others. You followed them away from safety, away from the world, into the space between." The voice was coming from the radio at my feet now, but also from the storm itself, surrounding me. This is where I live now, in the whiteouts, in the spaces where direction has no meaning and time moves wrong, and I'm so very hungry for company. I ran, picked a direction and ran as hard as I could through the knee-deep snow. Behind me, I heard footsteps, matching my pace, matching my rhythm exactly. I looked back. Nothing, but the footsteps continued, all around me, in front, behind, to both sides. Multiple sets of feet, all running, all keeping perfect pace with me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I took one step forward. The footsteps echoed. One step. From every direction, I was being surrounded by my own movements, by echoes of motion that shouldn't exist. "What do you want?" I screamed into the storm. The voice came back, closer now. "I want what was taken from me. I want the highway, the truck, the world beyond the white. I want to leave." "I can't give you that." "No, but you can take my place. You can stay here. And I can follow your footprints back to your truck, back to the highway, back to the world." I understood then. This thing, whatever it was, it had been human once. A driver like me. Someone who'd followed footprints in a blizzard. Someone who'd gotten lost in a whiteout and never found their way back. And now it existed in this nowhere space, this gap in reality that opened during storms, waiting for someone else to make the same mistake, waiting for a trade. "No," I said, "I'm not staying here. I'm finding my way back." "There is no back. The highway doesn't exist here. Nothing exists here, except me, except you, except the endless white." I closed my eyes, forced myself to think. Whiteouts are dangerous because they eliminate visual reference points. Ground and sky blend together. Distance becomes meaningless. Direction becomes impossible. But there are other senses: sound, smell, touch. I dropped to my knees, pressed my hand against the snow. Beneath it, I felt something. Pavement, hard, smooth, slightly warmer than the snow above it. The highway. It was right here, right beneath me. I'd been walking on it the entire time. The whiteout had made me think I had wandered into the prairie, had made me believe I was lost in an empty field. But the road had been under my feet all along. "Clever." The voice was angry now. "But it won't help you. You can feel the road, but you can't see it. You can't know which direction leads back and which leads deeper. You're still mine." It was right. The pavement stretched in both directions, east and west, but in the whiteout, I couldn't tell which was which. Then I remembered. My truck. I'd pulled over on the right shoulder, passenger side facing the prairie, which meant if I could find the edge of the highway, if I could determine which side was north and which was south, I could orient myself. I crawled through the snow, sweeping my hands back and forth, feeling for the transition from pavement to shoulder. There. The ground changed, became softer, gravel and earth instead of asphalt. I was on the shoulder. But which shoulder? North or south? I stood up, faced what I thought was the direction of travel. If I was on the north shoulder, my truck would be to my right. If I was on the south shoulder, it would be to my left. 50-50 chance. You're guessing. And if you guess wrong, you'll walk until the cold takes you, until you become like me. Another voice in the storm, another trap for the next driver. Maybe, but I'd been driving east when I pulled over, which meant the wind had been hitting the passenger side of my truck. And right now the wind was hitting my right side, which meant I was facing east, which meant the north shoulder was to my left, which meant my truck was behind me. I turned around, started walking west, staying on the shoulder, using the transition between pavement and gravel as my guide. No, you can't leave. You followed the footprints. You broke the rules. You have to stay. The voice was fading, growing distant. And the next storm, I'll be waiting, the next whiteout, the next driver, someone will take your place, someone always does. 4:12 p.m. I saw the lights, faint, orange, emergency flashers cutting through the white. My truck. I stumbled toward it, fell twice in the snow, got back up, kept moving. Reached the driver's door, yanked it open, pulled myself inside. The cab was warm. The engine was still running. The CB radio was silent. I sat there shaking, not just from cold, from the realization of how close I'd come to disappearing. On the passenger seat, my dash cam blinked, recording light still on. I grabbed it, rewound to 3:15 p.m. The footage showed me pulling over, opening the door, getting out, then nothing. Just the empty cab, the storm outside. For 57 minutes. At 4:12 p.m., I stumbled back into frame, climbed into the truck, but there was no footage of me walking away, no footage of me searching, no CB radio conversation about a stranded driver, just me leaving the truck and returning nearly an hour later, like those 57 minutes had happened somewhere the camera couldn't see. I put the truck in gear, drove west, away from mile marker 212, away from whatever existed in that whiteout. The storm was already starting to clear, visibility improving, the road becoming visible again. I reached the next truck stop 20 minutes later, pulled in, went inside. There was a TV in the corner showing local news, coverage of the blizzard, road closures, accident reports. One story caught my attention. Interstate 90 remains closed between mile markers 210 and 220 due to whiteout conditions. Highway Patrol reports multiple vehicles abandoned in the area over the past 40 years during similar storms. Drivers simply vanishing without explanation. The screen showed a map, marked locations where vehicles had been found empty, engines running, doors open, no sign of the drivers, all of them near mile marker 212. All of them during blizzards. I never made that delivery. Called the hospital, explained I'd been delayed by weather. They understood. I also never drove that section of the Interstate 90 again. Always take alternate routes, even if it adds hours to my trip. Because I know what's out there now, in the whiteouts, in the space between the storm and reality. Something that was human once, something that followed the wrong footprints, something that never found its way back. And it's still out there. Still calling for help on CB radios, still leaving footprints that lead away from safety, still waiting for the next driver to make the same mistake I did, the next person to follow those prints into the white. The third time I heard the emergency broadcast, I knew it wasn't coincidence, but by then, it was already too late to leave. I'm a meteorologist. I've spent 12 years studying weather patterns. I know how storms form. I know how they move. I know every technical detail about blizzards, from atmospheric pressure to crystal formation. What I didn't know, what they never taught us in graduate school, was that some storms aren't just weather. They're something else, and they have rules. The National Weather Service maintains weather stations across the country. Most are automated now, just equipment collecting data and transmitting it back to regional offices. But some of the older stations still require human operators, someone to maintain the equipment, to verify the automated readings, to provide ground truth when the models don't match reality. Station 17 in the Wind River Range of Wyoming was one of those stations. I was assigned there for the winter of 2023. 3 months of isolation at 8,000 feet. Just me, a cabin full of meteorological equipment, and the mountains. I arrived on December 1st. The previous operator, a man named Marcus, gave me a 2-day orientation before his replacement arrived. He showed me the equipment, the radio protocols, the supply schedule, the emergency procedures. Everything seemed standard, routine. Then, on his last evening before leaving, he pulled me aside. "There's something I need to tell you about the station." "Okay." He hesitated. "When the big storms come, the real blizzards, you need to follow specific rules." "What kind of rules?" "First, when you hear the emergency broadcast at 6 p.m., you stay inside. You don't go out to check equipment. You don't go out for any reason. You stay inside until 6 a.m. the next morning." I nodded. "Makes sense. Whiteout conditions can be..." "Second, if you hear knocking on the door after the broadcast starts, you don't answer, no matter who claims to be out there, no matter what they say they need. You don't open that door. Something in his tone made my skin prickle. Marcus, what are you talking about? Third, and this is important, if you see lights moving in the storm that aren't attached to anything, lights that don't behave like flashlights or headlights, you close the shutters and you don't look out the windows until morning. You're saying there's something dangerous about the storms here? He met my eyes. I'm saying there's something in them, and it's been here longer than this station, longer than anyone knows. The rules keep it outside, keep you safe, as long as you follow them exactly. Has anyone not followed them? His expression darkened. 3 operators before me, one in 1994, one in 2006, one in 2018. They all broke the rules during storms. They all disappeared. Disappeared how? Their bodies were found in the spring when the snow melted, miles from the station, frozen solid. But here's the thing. He swallowed hard. They all had expressions of absolute terror on their faces, and they all had their eyes open, like they'd seen something right before they died, something that made them run out into a killing storm rather than face it. Marcus left the next morning. I spent the first 3 weeks settling in, learning the routine, morning equipment checks, hourly readings, data transmission, evening maintenance. The work was repetitive but peaceful. I had satellite internet, a good supply of books, and the kind of solitude that lets your mind decompress from the chaos of normal life. The storms were impressive. The Wind River Range gets some of the most intense winter weather in the lower 48. I'd watch from the reinforced windows as walls of snow marched across the landscape. Wind speeds sometimes exceeding 80 miles per hour. Temperature drops of 40 degrees in an hour. Beautiful, powerful, but normal. Just weather. Then December 23rd arrived. I woke that morning to the barometric pressure dropping faster than I'd ever seen. The equipment was going crazy, wind speed increasing, temperature plummeting. By noon, the National Weather Service had issued a blizzard warning for the entire region. They were calling it a historic storm, potentially the worst in 20 years. I secured the station, triple-checked the emergency supplies, made sure the generator had fuel. Then I waited. The storm hit at 3 p.m., and when it hit hard. Visibility went to 0 in minutes, wind screaming like something alive, snow so thick it was like being underwater. The cabin shook with each gust, metal groaning, windows rattling despite their reinforcement. I monitored the instruments. Wind gusts topping 90 miles per hour, temperature at negative 18 degrees Fahrenheit, wind chill pushing negative 50. Deadly conditions. The kind of storm that could kill an exposed human in minutes. At 5:45 p.m., the radio crackled to life. This is an emergency broadcast from the National Weather Service. All residents in the Wind River Range area should shelter in place immediately. Do not attempt travel. Do not go outside for any reason. Repeat, do not go outside. This storm has produced whiteout conditions and life-threatening cold. Remain indoors until 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'd received dozens of similar broadcasts over the years, standard warning protocol. But something about this one felt different. The tone, the specific timing, the emphasis on staying inside until exactly 6 a.m. Marcus's words came back to me. When you hear the emergency broadcast at 6 p.m., you stay inside. It was 5:45, 15 minutes early. Then the broadcast repeated. Word for word, identical timing, identical inflection, and again every 30 seconds, the exact same message. That wasn't normal. Emergency broadcasts don't loop like that. They're issued once, maybe twice if conditions worsen, but not continuously, not with that mechanical precision. I checked the radio frequency. It was the correct NWS channel, the right call sign. Everything appeared legitimate, but it felt wrong. At exactly 6 p.m., the broadcast changed. This is an emergency message for Station 17. Operator, please respond. We have a situation developing. Please confirm you're receiving this transmission. I grabbed the handset. Station 17 here. Go ahead. Station 17. We're showing anomalous readings from your location. Can you verify your equipment is functioning properly? All equipment is nominal. What anomalies are you seeing? We're showing We're showing multiple heat signatures around your station, moving signatures, but your location is supposed to be isolated. Can you confirm you have no other personnel at your location? I looked at the windows. Nothing but white. Complete whiteout. Negative. I'm alone here. Copy that. Station 17. We need you to verify those readings. Can you do a visual check of the perimeter? We need to know if anyone else is out there. I thought of Marcus's first rule. You don't go out to check equipment. You don't go out for any reason. Negative. Conditions are too severe for external observation. I'm following whiteout protocols. Silence on the line. Then, Station 17, this is a direct order. We need visual confirmation. Lives may be at stake. Please conduct a perimeter check immediately. Something about the voice. It was right, but it was wrong. Like an AI trying to sound human, almost perfect, but missing some subtle quality. Say again your call sign, I said. Station 17, there's no time. People are dying out there. You need to open your door and check for survivors. Authenticate your transmission with station code. Station 17, please. I turned off the radio. The knocking started 30 seconds later. Not on the door, on the windows, all of them simultaneously, rhythmic, insistent, like someone desperately trying to get my attention. I stood in the center of the cabin, hands shaking. The rules. Follow the rules. If you hear knocking after the broadcast starts, you don't answer. But the knocking continued, growing more frantic, more desperate. Then I heard voices. Please, please let us in. We're freezing. A woman, young, terrified. We crashed our car down the ridge. We've been walking for hours. Please. A man, older, weakening. We're going to die out here. Please, just open the door. Children, crying, begging, every window, every door. Voices calling from all sides, pleading for help. I pressed my hands over my ears, closed my eyes. They're not real. They're not real. Just follow the rules. But what if they were real? What if actual people were dying outside while I hid in here following some superstitious rules from a paranoid former operator? I walked to the door, hand on the deadbolt. I need you to understand something before I continue. I'm a scientist. I don't believe in curses or hauntings or supernatural storms. Everything has a rational explanation. But as my hand touched that deadbolt, something stopped me. Not fear, not Marcus's warnings, logic. The voices were coming from every direction, every window, every door, all at once. But this was a remote mountain station. The nearest road was 12 miles away down a treacherous mountain path. The nearest town was 30 miles beyond that. Even if a car had crashed, even if survivors had made it here, they couldn't be at every entrance simultaneously. They couldn't be knocking on windows 8 feet off the ground on the second floor. Unless they weren't human. Unless they were something else that knew exactly what to say to make me open that door. I pulled my hand back. The knocking intensified. The voices became shrieks, angry now instead of desperate. Let us in! You can't hide! Open the door! Then, silence. Complete silence. Even the wind stopped. I should have been relieved. But the silence was worse than the noise. I went to the window, the one with the best view of the area around the cabin. The storm was still raging, snow swirling in violent chaos. But in that chaos, I saw something. Lights, dozens of them, moving through the storm, floating, dancing, like lanterns carried by invisible hands. But they weren't flashlights. They weren't headlights. They weren't any kind of light source I recognized. They pulsed, shifted colors, blue to green to white, and they moved in patterns, organized patterns, like they were searching, like they were hunting. I remembered Marcus's third rule. If you see lights that don't behave like normal lights, close the shutters. Don't look out the windows. I reached for the shutter controls. That's when one of the lights stopped, hovered directly in front of my window, and I saw what was inside it. It wasn't an entity. Not exactly. It was a gap, a hole in reality shaped roughly like a human. Inside that hole, I saw things that shouldn't exist, geometries that hurt to look at, colors that had no names, spaces that folded in on themselves impossibly. And at the center of it all, something looking back at me, not eyes, not any sensory organ I could identify, just awareness, intelligence, hunger. It knew I was watching. It wanted me to keep watching. Because the longer I looked, the more I understood. This wasn't a storm spirit or a mountain ghost or any folklore creature. This was something from somewhere else, something that existed in the spaces between normal matter, in the gaps in reality that quantum physics theorizes about but can't observe. And during these extreme storms, when the atmospheric pressure dropped just right, when the electromagnetic field shifted just so, those gaps opened, just a little, just enough for these things to push through. They couldn't maintain form in our reality, couldn't exist here fully, but they could reach, they could touch, they could take, and they desperately wanted to. I tore myself away from the window, slammed the shutters closed, but it was too late. I'd looked too long, made eye contact with something that shouldn't have eyes. The cabin went dark, not like the power failed, like darkness rushed in to fill every space, thick, oppressive, alive. I fumbled for my flashlight, clicked it on. The beam penetrated maybe 2 feet before the darkness swallowed it. I heard movement. All around me, things sliding across the floor, across the walls, across the ceiling, whispers in languages I didn't know, voices that came from directions that didn't exist, inside, outside, above, below, from the past and future simultaneously. And beneath it all, a sound like reality tearing, like the fabric of space being pulled apart thread by thread. The temperature dropped, not cold like winter, cold like the heat was being drained from the air, from the walls, from me. I could see my breath, could see frost forming on every surface in seconds. Something touched my shoulder. I spun around, flashlight sweeping, nothing there. But I felt it. Fingers, or what passed for fingers, pressing into my coat, through my coat, into my skin, trying to pull me, not physically, dimensionally, trying to drag me into that space between spaces where they existed. I ran, stumbled through the dark cabin, hit walls, knocked over equipment, didn't matter. I had to get to the radio room, the one place Marcus had reinforced beyond standard. Extra insulation, Faraday cage built into the walls, multiple locks on the door. I found it by touch, yanked the door open, threw myself inside, slammed it behind me. The moment the locks engaged, the pressure stopped. The darkness receded. The temperature returned to normal. The radio room was protected, shielded. Whatever those things were, they couldn't reach me here. I slumped against the door, gasping. The radio crackled. "Station 17, we know you're listening. We know you're hiding." The voice from before. The fake NWS broadcast. "You looked at us. You made contact. Now we can find you anywhere. We can follow you anywhere, even when you leave this mountain." "No," I whispered, "unless—" I waited. "Unless you open the door. Let us in fully. Give us form. Give us substance. Then we won't need you anymore. Then we'll let you go." "You're lying." "Maybe, maybe not, but you have 12 hours until sunrise. 12 hours alone in this room while we press against the walls, while we whisper through the cracks, while we show you glimpses of what waits in the spaces between. 12 hours to decide. Come out and face us, or hide and carry us with you forever." I turned off the radio, checked my watch, 6:32 p.m. 11 and a half hours until sunrise, until 6 a.m. when the rules said it would be safe. I could do this. I had survived 12 hours before. Sleep deprivation training in grad school, long field deployments. I could stay awake, stay alert. I just had to wait. The whispers started at 7 p.m. Not through the radio, through the walls themselves, the metal vibrating at frequencies that formed words. "Let us in. Just open the door. We can make you open it. We can make you do anything we want." I turned on music. Loud, trying to drown them out. The speakers shorted out, sparks, smoke, then silence. Just the whispers, always the whispers. 8 p.m. I started seeing things in the corners of the room, shadows that moved wrong, shapes that shouldn't be possible. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. The shapes remained. They were seeping through somehow, finding microscopic gaps in the shielding, pushing through particle by particle. By 9 p.m., the shadows had form, vaguely human, reaching toward me with appendages that were almost arms. By 10 p.m., they were touching me. Light brushes against my neck, my hands, my face. Each touch was ice cold. Each touch made me feel less, like parts of me were being slowly erased. By 11 p.m., I was having trouble remembering why I was hiding, why I couldn't just open the door. It seemed silly, paranoid. They just wanted to come inside. What was the harm? I found myself standing, walking toward the door, hand on the lock. Then I looked down at my hands. They were translucent, fading, becoming like them. The realization snapped me back. I stumbled away from the door, pressed myself into the farthest corner. They were winning. Slowly but surely they were pulling me across, making me one of them. Midnight, 6 hours until sunrise. I couldn't feel my feet anymore, couldn't feel most of my body. Looking down, I could see through myself, see the floor beneath where I sat. The whispers had become a roar, thousands of voices all speaking at once. In the gaps between words, I heard other sounds, sounds from the place they came from, sounds that human ears weren't meant to process. It was beautiful, terrible, utterly alien, and I was being pulled toward it. Part of me wanted to go, wanted to stop fighting, wanted to see what existed in that space between spaces. But another part, the part that was still human, was screaming. I had to do something, had to break the connection, had to remind myself of who I was, what I was. I grabbed a pen from the desk, pressed the point into my palm. Pain, sharp, real, immediate, blood, red, warm, physical. The shadows recoiled, just slightly, just for a moment, but it was enough. I understood. They couldn't fully touch the physical, couldn't affect matter that was too dense, too real. I grabbed everything solid in the room, books, equipment, tools, piled them around me, created a barrier of physical mass. The shadows pressed against it, tested it, but they couldn't push through, not completely. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I stayed in my cocoon of physical objects, focusing on the pain in my palm, on the feeling of solid matter beneath me, on anything that connected me to reality. The shadows grew more desperate, more aggressive, clawing at the barriers, but they couldn't breach them. 4 a.m., 5 a.m. The whispers began to fade, growing distant, less insistent. They knew the night was ending. Their window was closing. 5:30 a.m. The shadows were barely visible now, retreating, flowing back through whatever microscopic gaps they'd entered through. 5:45 a.m. Complete silence. The pressure lifted. The cold receded. 6 a.m. Sunrise. I stayed in my corner for another hour, too afraid to move, too afraid to believe it was really over. Finally, at 7 a.m., I unlocked the radio room door. The cabin was exactly as I'd left it, equipment scattered, lights off, but empty, normal. I went to the window, opened the shutters. The storm was gone. Clear blue sky. Morning sun glinting off fresh snow. The mountains stretching beautiful and peaceful in every direction. Like nothing had happened. I lasted 2 more weeks at Station 17. Followed the rules carefully. When storms came, I stayed inside. Ignored the voices, closed the shutters. But I couldn't stay. Couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that something was waiting for me to slip up, to break the rules just once. I put in for a transfer. Early termination, medical leave. The NWS approved it. They always do for the Station 17 operators who request it. Because they know. They must know. Why else maintain those specific protocols? Why else the strict rules? They've known for decades that something lives in those storms, something that reaches through when conditions are right, something that hunts. But they'll never admit it, never document it officially. Because how do you explain that to the public? How do you tell people that some weather isn't just weather? I work in climate modeling now, desk job, safe, boring. But I still check the weather reports for the Wind River Range, still watch for those historic blizzards. And every time one develops, every time the barometric pressure drops just right and the conditions align, I wonder about the operator at Station 17. Wonder if they're following the rules. Wonder if they'll make it until sunrise. Because the thing about rules, eventually, everyone breaks them. Eventually, everyone opens the door. Station 17 is still operational, still collecting data, still requiring human operators for 3-month rotations. Applications are always open. They never have trouble finding someone willing to spend a winter alone in the mountains, but they go through operators fast. Very, very fast.